But we're going to kind of focus today heavily on nutrients. And I didn't add a slide, which I was reminded when Rick said something about organic fertilizers. I want to talk to you about what I've learned in the last 6 months about that, which is some groundbreaking stuff. And then we'll talk a little bit about water usage throughout the plant, how that functions, maybe not in that same order. And then I'd like to get out in the garden and take a look at a few things. So I'll kind of, not so much in the presentation, but when we get out in the garden, I'll kind of give you guys a little peek into my brain, how I function when I'm working with clients, whether it's on a golf course, whether it's anywhere, on how I diagnose plants, right? And what I need to do to figure out the problems, okay? So we'll go into that. So that'll be kind of a fun little thing to do, and what I'd like to do is kind of go in, and maybe Kathy can help us on this. If there's certain trees that are struggling, I'm not looking for the right answer. We're just looking for something that we can kind of practice and kind of do. And what we'll do, maybe we'll break off into a couple different groups and have two people kind of figure out, look at one tree and say, okay, what's wrong with this tree, or what's the problems, what's its ailments, and then we'll kind of go back to you and say, okay, what do you guys come up with, kind of a thing, okay? So and then for tomorrow, we'll talk a little probably about light intensity and quality, seasonal transitions and dormancy. It's important right now. This is the end of the summer. As we're getting through summer, we're still getting those hot days, but shorter days, okay? And what happens with the plant in that regard. And then also a little bit on just aftercare. We might touch on that a little bit today, but also tomorrow, because this is the time of year where a lot of work happens on certain species of trees, especially junipers, and how do we manage that? And then also I want to talk about this concept. I'll briefly touch on it. It may be a long conversation, but there's a concept of health and what we consider ultimate health, okay? And so we'll talk about that, which is kind of interesting. And this is something that Ryan Neal teaches very heavily, but also it's something in the landscape and horticulture industry that's really coming on strong, okay? And it's very similar, if you want to compare it to something, to holistic medicine for the medical industry and for human health, okay? So very similar to that, all right? Any questions so far?
And we're going to get the slides, right?
Yeah, what I'll do is, and I might even tonight if I find some time, which I may or may not. I heard you guys have really good trees. I'm excited to see them. So, but I'm going to try to, if we've talked about something and it wasn't the slide, I'll try to kind of throw something in there so you guys can remember. But definitely take notes. I'm a big fan of taking notes because even if I never read them again for some reason when I'm writing them, it helps to kind of inscribe it into my brain. But okay, so I don't know if this is accurate. Probably not. Nope, it's an old one. So, okay, you guys know who I am. And just want to remind you of this principle here, right? Or this concept that I kind of developed, and then as I've spent more time in the industry and spent more time doing bonsai and working with clients and consulting, this has continued to be reinforced and backed up as I look at new things. And really what it is kind of goes into what Kathy was saying about microclimates, how difficult it is to figure out or to tell someone, especially like Kathy has numerous students all over the United States that have very, very different climates. How do you tell them, how do you dictate to them what they need to do for even the same species of tree, okay? And really it's this thing. So there are certain principles that really never change, right? And so example principle, trees need water, okay? But a practice would be watering every morning, okay? Well, that practice may change depending on who you are. Maybe if you're in a very foggy situation, you wait a little bit to water your trees until maybe a little bit in the afternoon when that cloud cover is broken. So practices will change all the time, okay? And if you can kind of wrap your head around that concept that, hey, practices are going to change, so what is the principle that is being reinforced with a certain practice, then you can take whatever anyone else says and apply it to your own personal situation, right? Okay. And then that also avoids I've seen a lot of lectures or been in demos or whatever, and someone says, oh, you do this, and someone goes, no, that doesn't work at my house. And it's like, well, we didn't ask you, but you're right, it probably doesn't work at your house. But we're not here to say what's right and what's wrong, because that's really not what horticulture is. There's advantages and disadvantages, but there's no right or wrong answers, unfortunately. And this is the whole reason, okay? So any questions on this concept here? Okay. So I'm the only one who's actually articulated this concept that I know of in horticulture, but I think a lot of people constantly are trying to say this, but not in this term, right?